behavior. The case of a woman who says she was raped in the back of a police van is drawing attention to an apparent loophole in some state laws that may allow police to escape sexual assault charges by claiming sex acts were consensual. The 19-year-old woman, who goes by the alias Anna Chambers, says 2 New York City police officers took turns raping her inside an undercover NYPD van. Prosecutors say they obtained DNA from Chambers matching former detectives Eddie Martin's and Richard Hall. Both officers pleaded not guilty to nearly 50 charges, including rape and kidnapping, claiming the woman consented to having sex with them. Magdalena Doris from our CBS station in New York spoke with Chambers as she faced her alleged attackers in court in January.
A 19-year-old woman forever changed after she says a traffic stop turned horrific.
It's very sad that it's police officers that did this. I don't know. They're supposed to protect and serve, right?
Anna is present at Brooklyn Supreme Court to face the former NYPD officers, 37-year-old Eddie Martins and 32-year-old Richard Hall, who she says brutally took turns raping her after she was taken into custody for possession of drugs September 15th. Anna stopped to speak to us before heading inside, past chanting supporters to face the men accused of assaulting her and then dropping her off blocks away from the 60th precinct.
I really appreciate the support. Just imagine it was your child.
Prosecutors say DNA evidence collected from the victim at Maimonides Hospital connected Officer Martins and Hall to the crime. They were indicted on nearly 50 charges, including kidnapping and rape. The defense argues that DNA evidence can't prove what happened inside that NYPD van wasn't consensual. Anna's lawyer is concerned the prosecution may motion to use social media photos to discredit the victim.
They have no defense to this case, so they're trying to attack and shame her and destroy her character, destroy her reputation.
Both officers Martins and Hall quit their jobs with the department before facing an NYPD departmental hearing that could have resulted in their firing. The defense did not speak to the press today. The next court date is April 5th. Anna says she will be present then and for every court date thereafter. At Brooklyn Supreme Court, Magdalena Doris, CBS 2 News.
Wendy Patrick is a prosecutor and legal analyst. She joins us now via Skype from San Diego. Wendy, thanks for taking the time to talk with us. As we mentioned earlier,
thanks, Meg.
Both of the former detectives are pleading not guilty, saying Anna Chambers consented to having sex with them in the back of an NYPD van. Legally speaking, how can someone consent to having sex given the power dynamics at play during an arrest?
That's exactly one of the reasons, Meg, that so many states have laws criminalizing any kind of behavior between somebody in that kind of a position of power and somebody in law enforcement custody. Now, in the states that don't, like New York, the cops can be charged with rape. That's what prosecutors charge them with. You heard there were 50 allegations that they were indicted on, because part of the analysis for the jury is going to be exactly your question. How can somebody consent under those circumstances? Now, it's made more difficult when the law doesn't explicitly criminalize behavior between a detainee and a law enforcement officer, but it doesn't make it impossible, and that's exactly what this case is about.
So, Wendy, the big question then, New York law currently bars any sexual contact in prisons between corrections workers and inmates, but is there any reason why this shouldn't also apply to police and arrestees?
No, and that's why the legislation has already acted. You know, many cases like this, not just in the law enforcement arena, but many other businesses and many other companies and many other industries, especially as we've seen in the hashtag Me Too movement, you see that litigation leads to legislation. Case fact patterns arise where people ask the questions they're asking in New York. Why don't the same laws apply across the board when somebody is in custody? In that kind of custodial arena where you've got an inherent power imbalance that could result in exploitation. So that's the kind of case and the kind of fact pattern that arises in many different states and does end up leading to legislation being introduced and passed.
Wendy, I want to ask you about this 2015 Associated Press investigation. They found about 1,000 police officers across the country had lost their badges in a 6-year period for rape and other sexual assault. Now, that total did not include New York, where this case is taking place, or California, where you are. because those states didn't track the number of officers fired for such offenses. I imagine it would have been higher. Would a better tracking system bring more attention to these loopholes?
You know, I think the case like we're seeing now in New York brings a lot of attention to these loopholes. I mean, it is few and far between the officers that engage in this kind of misconduct. Most of them are brave. They are the kind of people we would want to have in our neighborhood. They run towards danger to save the rest of us who are running away. So when you have the very rare cases like this, when you have conduct like this that prosecutors really went after in New York, I mean, 50 counts, this is the kind of case that does make a difference and does shine a spotlight on this kind of an imbalance, a loophole, as we've been calling it, that really should be fixed. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's fixed in New York and other states sooner rather than later.
Wendy, in your professional opinion as a prosecutor, what are the chances these officers are convicted on the range of charges they're facing, including rape and kidnapping?
You know, that would depend on what evidence is going to be admissible in court. One of the things that we don't have the benefit of, Meg, is knowing what a judge is going to rule in terms of how much evidence he or she is going to admit and put in front of a jury, if the case even goes that far. It's easy in the court of public opinion to look at everything that's being released and leaked and discussed, but that doesn't always reflect the evidence that's going to be admissible in a courtroom. And remember, that's the only evidence that a jury is going to be allowed to consider in deciding how they're going to end up resolving a case like this. So I've been doing this job, and I've been a defense attorney as well for so many years that I know better than to guess, to predict, unless I have all of the evidence in front of me, what's going to happen.
All right. Wendy Patrick, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.